interesting to look at, particularly the mid lane matchup between these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, SoaR, they've got a lot of PC players with experience moving over to the console scene, but only this split, this is their rookie split on the console, whereas Obey, the defending world champs, they've got some PC veterans that moved over last season. It obviously ended up working out for them in the end, taking home the crown with the world championship. So SoaR trying to make a statement and say they belong here with these console pros, trying to take some games off the defending world champs, who have scuffled a little bit early on in the season, but looking to turn it around here. Awilish, again, the first pick. Definitely, these teams seem to be prioritizing pressure in the jungle.
Teams really want that pressure because the more pressure you have early on, the higher likelihood you have of snowballing the game into your favor. And Obey Alliance immediately going to pick up the Xingtian and Khepri as a response, which I think is really interesting, going ahead and leaking the fact that that Xingtian is in fact going to be going towards solo lane. I mean, you can already anticipate it considering it's a god that Doris definitely favors in that solo lane. But, you know, you usually want to have a little bit more flexibility, but I'm sure that Obey have a game plan behind it.
I mean, like you said, if you've done your homework, Doris likes to play Guardians. Obey picked a Guardian. If it's something that can solo, it's probably going to Doris. That's exactly what we're going to see. Odin and Medusa, the other two selections for SoaR. And then Hun Bat's going to be going to Mifflin in the jungle for Obey, who immediately turn their attention to the mid lane, as does SoaR. Raw band away, as well as Vulcan. Both these mid laners may have a couple fewer picks to go between them. Love this Zhong Kui band up against Shaliber. This is a pretty long-standing mid lane matchup. Shaliber versus Delta Marine 72. And Delta's going to one of his comfort picks, the Habwa. Not the most traditional, but one that he basically farms people with.
He's certainly exerted a lot of dominance on this Habwa facing off against other teams.
Wow, the hell.
And Shaliber, with the flexing of his own god pool, pulling out the hell. I mean, you could tell that mages were certainly the targets
in the
here.
Hades, what year is it? What is happening right now?
This is like some Season 1 Smite right now.
This is insanity. I mean, we did see Medieval pull out the Hades last week, and they got a W with it, so SoaR sticking to what has worked for them in the past. And remember, Hell was brought out against SoaR by Elevate, specifically Michael Checo in that hunter role. So maybe, you know, they get handed the L by Hell, and they're like, yeah, we could do that. We could make this work. And Shaliber definitely a fan of the less traditional mid laners, so I guess it is kind of a fit there. On her going to be the last selection there for Obey, rounding out their draft. Much more traditional, especially if you have been following this team and know these players. The picks that could be a little bit out of place, like the Hebo, like the Guardian in the jungle or in the solo lane, you know that this is Obey's comfort zone with a draft like this.
I do like the draft from SoaR, though, considering that they have that Odin-Awilish combination, in that anybody who gets trapped inside of that Odin ring, should they try to escape with a jump, I'm looking at bots on her and Dwarist here on that Xingtian. It can be difficult, because if Kaden is waiting in the right spots at the right time, he can definitely pull somebody right back into that Odin cage, and not having any healing available for yourself, that's a very easy way to fall.
That is true, and Erkuger picks the on-her into the Awilish because of the fact that Stormy's playing as Odin with the cage, knows that he can't really afford to stay in there for a long time. Shaliber's used about a quarter of his mana just trying to poke out the opposition, maybe in a little bit of trouble. Erkuger and Obey seem to like this strategy that LG does pretty consistently, where the hunter is all by himself and solos the minis, but SoaR adapting nicely, preventing Erkuger from getting any sort of farm at all on this left-hand side, taking away both sets of minis, and now they're going to have lane pressure on top of that.
Erkuger unfortunately missing the impale there onto Zaxi just means that he's not going to have his ability available to try and steal away his own minis from the invade, and now SoaR immediately potentially looking towards that red lane buff, but they'd rather just play it safe, stick to farming out the lane.
Yeah, very safe call there from SoaR. If they're able to steal that red buff away from Jelly and Delta Marine, that is a big boost for them and could easily snowball this left-hand side of the map because of it, but they take the safer route, guarantee themselves the farm, and allow Jelly and Delta Marine to secure their own red. On the right-hand side, Doc has been left all alone on this Hades, but he's not too worried about it. Hades definitely does bring some excellent early clear to that solo lane. That's not one of the things that Hades is lacking as a character.
As a Hades, it's probably a more favorable situation to be left alone. That way you can just safely farm out your lane. I mean, you do have the heal available to yourself once you get your Blight onto the wave, so you might as well just be left alone, and Caden recognizes that as a wheeler, so he's just going to help out Chalibur in that mid lane.
And there's a lot of guys, I mean, we talked about the synergy between the Odin and the Awilish, but as well as the Hades and the Awilish. If you try and jump out of that Hades ultimate, Caden can pull you right back into that as well, so twofold. The willingness to jump out versus jump out of these circular ultimates versus being pulled back in. The only thing that SoaR, I think, is really lacking in this draft, Taco, is consistent burst damage, especially without ultimates. They're really relying on Zaxi with the Petrify and the Acid Spray to provide that burst in these 5-on-5 team fights.
Well, the interesting part here is that SoaR's draft is more of the initial engage. 5-man composition need to be available, but they could also potentially just need the 4-man to take down an early Gold Fury, and nobody on Obey is even aware that Oracle Vision is in favor of SoaR, and that is a 2.5-minute Gold Fury.
Obey caught sleeping there. The veterans not paying attention to the map, it seems, as SoaR able to sneak away that Gold Fury right around the 2.5-minute mark. Puts them up right around 1,200 gold. So if Obey are able to find a first blood, that would basically cut that lead nearly in half, especially if they could find some buff invades on the backside of it. But either way, SoaR slightly in the lead, and with a Hell on your team, if you're slightly in the lead, that's a great spot for you to be in.
Any kind of composition that has a healer-based damage and utility, that's always a dangerous scenario to try and flirt with, because healers from behind, not so scary. Healers even or ahead, you're running into a lot of problems trying to extend any sort of engagement, because that's all that SoaR want. They just want the extended engagement, and their draft, like I was mentioning earlier, focuses around that 5v5 team fight. And so if they find the initial engagement and are able to secure a kill inside of that Odin ring from the get-go, Obey could suffer really hard here, because their draft looks to me more like a counter engage. They want to sit back, let SoaR fight into them, and then look for the counter pick.
But they've got the burst damage to turn around a fight in that scenario. I mean, I'm looking at the on her in the mid stages. Delta Marine, of course, on this Hebo. The Hebo does one thing, but he does it really, really well, and that's put out damage in bunches and can absolutely turn a fight with just one crushing wave. And that's the question I was going to pose to you, is that if you're Obey, a lot of times when you're up against a healer, especially one as potent as hell, you want to build that anti-heal. You want to make sure that those heals aren't as effective. But in this sort of scenario, I think you could make the argument that it'd be better for Obey to just build burst damage and try and one-shot the Hell or whatever target they pick out, instead of trying to kind of de-incentivize these long engagements that SoaR want to take anyways.
SoaR will have to be careful, considering that the Habwa is available for Obey. I mean, he's always considered the god with 3 ultimates instead of just the 1 because of his damage output. And it's certainly a tricky situation to find yourself in should the engagements not be favorable.
Mifflin around the back of Stormy Race finds the cage onto Jelly. There's the Fear No Evil onto Stormy to prevent the bird bomb and the burst coming out of that support. So 2 ultimates expended, but I think I'd argue that Obey's was a little bit more valuable. Mifflin not able to find anything really with that Fear No Evil. DeWorst is here, as is Medieval, but neither solo lane are able to make the impact as Oracles go the way of SoaR, continuing to keep that vision advantage on the left-hand side.
And Stormy taking a little bit of poke from Eric Cougar, just going to be healed up immediately by Chalibur on this Hell.
And he's got a lot of CDR as well. He's got that Sands of Time. He's got that those cooldown boots as well. So it's very, very difficult to find him when his cooldowns aren't available to him, because they're basically always available to him, especially having 6 abilities at all times because of that stanch switch ultimate. Though there is, of course, a trade-off. It's kind of funny, because he said the enemy mid laner, he's got 3 ults because he's Hebo, and that's the meme, right? Well, Hell has 0 ults. So if you look at it that way, Hebo is 3 times better than Hell, so it should be an easy win for Obey, right?
That's some solid NA math you got going there, Aggro.
Yeah, what do you mean? What's wrong with it? Well, just because
actually,
you lived in Europe for a little bit doesn't mean you get to
No, because think about what you just said. Hell has 0, right?
Yeah.
What's 3 times 0?
Okay, well, yeah, I'm assuming it's just like, it's additive. I'm going by addition here. It's 3, I've got 3 more ultimates, so I guess times was the wrong verbiage. I'm sorry. Taco. But I do not appreciate this NA garbage because you're part of NA as well. We have to stick together against Hindu. What have you learned so far here, Taco? We have to band together against Hindu because divided, we may be strong enough to withstand his BM, but divided, we never will be.
I'm just saying, Hindu's probably going to BM both of us anyway.
He's definitely going to. That's why we have to stick together.
It doesn't make a difference.
You've lost hope already. Wow, this is gonna be long.
There is a pretty big difference already happening in this game, though, and that's coming out of the duo lane between Air Cougar and Zaxi. Zaxi already finding a 2-level lead over Air Cougar. That's a pretty massive experience difference between the hunters this early on in the game.
Is it coming from the buff invades? Is it coming from the Oracle secure, or is he just pushing? Has he been pushing Air Cougar under tower?
It's a combination of all three, I'd say.
Oh, Jelly knocked up and pulled back in. The bird bomb's there. Jelly revives himself, but he's still going to be stuck in the cage, and Zaxi turns him to stone with that Petrify. Stormy on the retreat. There's the knockup and the crushing wave, but it only hit Zaxi. Now Delta Marine's in a bad spot. He turns it around and finds Kaden, but Zaxi hits 2 there. Double kill for the Hunter. Stormy not dissuaded by his low HP bar. Going to jump forward because of that health assistance from Shalabur. And there's the Pillar of Agony from Medieval Doc. I was going to say this is perfect timing because the Gold Fury is about to respawn. Great Impale peels Doc off of that ward, which allows Doris to teleport in. But again, the healing is here for SoaR, and Obey just don't have an answer to it yet. Healing
might be in favor of SoaR, but at the same time, Obey have a little bit more mana in their favor in comparison to SoaR. So disengaging off the Gold Fury, definitely the safe call there for SoaR. You don't want to risk losing this 3K, 2.5K lead that they've established for themselves, because that's just an unfavorable situation considering that their composition relies pretty heavily upon maintaining a lead.
Well, I love the idea of where SoaR is fighting, because you were just talking about what kind of a lead Zaxi has over Air Cougar, and it's no coincidence that SoaR is fighting on that left side, trying to get Zaxi involved in these early fights and really allow him to abuse this lead that he's earned for himself early on in the duo lane. And you can see he picks up both kills there for SoaR. So doing the right stuff is that now veteran hunter, the console native Zaxi, on this Medusa, is able to finish off that Transcendence a little bit earlier than Air Cougar can on this on her. It's going to mean that this lead is only going to get bigger for Zaxi right now.
And now we're also approaching that stage of the game where it really comes to make it or break with these Odin ultimates. If Stormy isn't smart at utilizing his ring at the proper time, Obey could very easily turn these engagements into their favor due to the burst damage that you were talking about earlier. And should that happen, it's very easy for a golden experience lead to dwindle almost immediately.
But Delta Marine is going to have to worry about this long-range poke that Hell can provide. Used to not be able to say that. Hell was a very melee-oriented character. One of the things that kind of kept her in this in the dark as far as competitive viability goes. But with the change to that first ability, can penetrate minions now and explodes at the end. Can really get some excellent poke from a distance, and Shalabur been making use of that basically all game long.
And having Oracle Vision on the side of Obey makes it really difficult for SoaR to try and quickly secure any sneaky Gold Fury objectives like we saw them doing at the 2.5-minute mark. So pretty safe position for Obey to be in. But speaking of which, that Oracle Vision actually did just wear off on the Gold Fury. So now it could potentially be anybody's game, and I wouldn't be surprised to see either of these two teams start grouping up here to look for potential Gold Fury fights.
Are you surprised at how passive Obey has been playing this early game? I mean, I know Hebo isn't a great early game character, and that could be why you see them playing a little bit more passively. As Stormy Rays is done being passive, he jumps underneath that tier 1 tower, and the Fear No Evil locks him in there for a little bit, but he's still stuck in that cage, and Shalabur is able to finish him off with the help of that Petrify from Zaxi, who beat Air Cougar to the middle lane. Another clean pick there for SoaR, their 3rd kill of the game. This one going over to the mid lane Shalabur. It just feels to me that Obey have not been the aggressors yet into this composition from SoaR.
Obey don't really want to be the aggressors into this composition, though, especially not when the Odin Ring is available. They're primarily depending upon bouncing off of whatever engagements SoaR try to bring to the table, and it looks like SoaR really want to engage underneath this Gold Fury now.
There's the knockup onto Mifflin and pulled back in by Kaden. Purification beats are used, and Mifflin's able to escape, but Gold Fury falls in favor of SoaR. Mifflin with 1 HP. he is going to be able to stay alive, but the Gold Fury again goes the way of SoaR, extending that gold lead a little bit higher, up around 4,000 gold now and 5,000 experience. We talked about it from basically minute 2, where SoaR get the first Gold Fury of the game. Is if you're even or ahead with a healer like Hell on your team, you're in a great spot. And the spot just keeps getting better and better for SoaR as this game has gone on.
And considering that it is going to be very difficult for Obey to try building early on into some sort of anti-heal, you don't really want to be prioritizing the Divine Ruin at this stage of the game, but with the lead that SoaR are starting to acquire, Delta Marine might have to start opting into it.
He's in trouble because of he hasn't been able to build that burst damage quite yet. He's been forced into more of a defensive route because of how much pressure has been put onto him by Kaden and Shaliber and Stormy Rays as well on this Odin. I think that's a big reason why you see the Dynasty Plate Helm being the selection for Delta Marine in the mid lane, is that support warrior being played by Stormy. And it's just been, you haven't been able to play aggressive, like we said. And when you're playing passive up against a Hell, you allow her to get that farm. It's very difficult to come back against a healer, especially when they're up around 335, 4,000 gold.
And speaking of aggression, we're pretty accustomed to usually seeing Air Cougar try to play a more aggressive ADC, but he's just been unable to do so against Zaxi on this Medusa, now with a 3-level lead over Air Cougar. And realistically, every time Air Cougar has tried to approach these team fights, even with Obey kind of hanging around the area, he's just been unable to really get in there, and a lot of his impales have also been pretty off the mark. So just an awkward situation overall for Obey.
And it all goes back to SoaR doing their homework, knowing what Obey likes to do at the start on the Hunter on the duo lane, and stealing away both the mini camps on the buffs, really putting Air Cougar behind from minute 1. Portal Demon started up by SoaR. Zaxi did back and now makes a rotation in. Stormy Rays finds 2 with the cage, and Delta Marine just gets erased. There's the damage from Pillar of Agony as well. Jelly finds the revive onto himself, but he's still in the wrong spot, the wrong part of town, and Zaxi finds 5 kills already for SoaR. DeWorst on the run, pulled back in by Kaden and put down as well. A great heal from Shaliber saves his life until that Hydra's auto puts him down from Shaliber. Air Cougar jumps away until cleaned up by Kaden. 4 dead. Mifflin able to find the sneaky back in the blue buff, but SoaR just dominating the defending world champs, 7-2 in kills.
And now this Portal Demon is all SoaR's. Just nobody available on the side of Obey to even think about contesting. And taking out the Portal Demon along with the T1 tower in the solo lane is really going to open up a ton of map pressure for SoaR and make it incredibly difficult for Obey to feel comfortable walking around their own jungle.
And again, it starts off with a great cage from Stormy Rays right off the bat, and he's always looking for Delta Marine. That has been the target time and time again for the support on the Odin, always looking for that really hyper carry for Obey. He really has been the defending world's MVP in the mid lane. It's really been the focus of many teams early on here in the season for Obey, and the rest of Obey just hasn't really been able to answer back with that focus on the mid laner.
And that's exactly what you want to happen. You do not want to permit this Hebo any sort of flexibility to try and get off the burst damage, because if the burst damage starts coming online, all Delta Marines is one solid pick, just a 3 into his ultimate, and he could still do a decent chunk of damage, even though he is only level 11.
Absolutely. Never out of it when you've got a Hebo on your team, because he can absolutely erase one of the enemy carries very, very quickly. Mifflin thinking about trying to come around the backside, but doesn't have that blink. Is level 12, but hasn't back to base to pick up that second relic. Has been unable to due to the pressure applied by SoaR. 5-man grouping here. Medieval dashes in, finds 4 with that Pillar of Agony, pulled back in, right into the Petrify as well. Cougar still alive though, and the turnaround from Obey is fantastic. Delta Marine finds Medieval. DeWorst trying to chase down Stormy Rays underneath that mid lane. Somehow Obey survive a phenomenal initiation, and now they're trying to turn it around. Mifflin finds one, Delta finds another. Shaliber's gonna fall as well. Only Zaxi left alive, What a turnaround underneath the tier 1 tower by Obey.
And that's the counter engage that we were just talking about, available from Obey. All they needed was that one slip up from SoaR to not secure the kills fast enough, and immediately just completely destroyed underneath that T1. The CC chain, absolutely perfect from Obey.
That was just phenomenal. The problem for Obey is there's nothing on the map for them to take. Gold Fury is just now respawned, and with Delta Marine sticking around to secure these oracles, he's not going to be back in time to press the advantage that Obey just earned themselves. So while it feels good and looks good for them, it really doesn't do a whole lot to stem the bleeding. I mean, yeah, they get a decent amount of gold back, and they stop SoaR from even getting that 500 gold in their favor, but they're still down over 4,000 experience and gold.
If anything, though, that counter engagement is certainly going to make SoaR think twice before choosing to dive underneath an objective on the side of Obey, because it's just so problematic whenever you think that you have the fight and then a Khepri ultimate just completely saves alive a Cougar. Two of your members are just getting absolutely obliterated by a Hebo, and then to top it all off, you've just got your Hades trying to tank up all this damage alongside a Stormy Raze, but you can only take a tower for so long.
Well, SoaR, they still understand that they're in the lead and going to start up the Gold Fury despite Obey having the vision. Blink is down right now for Kaden, and Medieval Doc trying to find the damage onto Delta Marine. There's a Pillar of Agony, forces out that Purification Beads. Nice play out of the solo laner there. Mifflin does have the blink this time around, and Obey have all 5 of their ults. Mifflin trying to come around the back. There's the blink and the Fear No Evil, but SoaR spread out. They aren't able to find too much damage. Stormy drops the cage, but Mifflin pulled back in. Kaden trying to fight him with that gravity surge, but a great Scarab's Blessing saves the life of the jungler. Medieval still frontlining on this Hades, but Obey has retreated. The double meditation popped by both Jelly and DeWorst. Make sure that everyone from Obey is healthy enough to match the healing coming out of Shaliber.
And immediately SoaR look to leash this Gold Fury. They really want to take up this fight. They're not quite done yet, and now it could be Obey getting turned on once again.
2-man knock up there from Delta Marine over the wall. The Purification Beads used there, or excuse me, the cleanse actually comes out of Shaliber to make sure that Stormy and Medieval Doc are safe. But again, these sorts of engagements favor SoaR. They have the healer, Obey have the double med, but both of those are on cooldown now, Taco, and so SoaR, they're gonna pull this Gold Fury once more. Mifflin's in the mid lane trying to get some farm. Delta Marine still has that crushing wave, and Petrify is still ready to go for Zaxi. Gold Fury getting very, very low. There's the crushing wave, doesn't quite secure it, but Obey get the Gold Fury. Shaliber finds Jelly, the Pillar of Agony, not enough to find any other kills. Delta Marine trying to trade out his life for the enemy solo laner, but cannot do so. Delta's gonna fall as well. Obey steal away the gold, but they lose 2 in the process, trying to stem the bleeding here up against SoaR, but SoaR take the fight. The 5 members still strong here. They're all gonna be, even if they aren't strong quite yet, like Medieval, can just easily be healed up by his own kit or that of Shaliber.
And securing the T1 tower in the main lane, as well as Kaden securing the kill onto Mifflin. That is just, I mean, all around now, it's just entirely in SoaR's favor. What looked to be a solid steal from Obey is just going to be completely mitigated, considering that they're now picking up 2 T1 towers as well as potentially a Portal Demon.
Tier 1 tower in mid falls, Tier 1 tower in duo falls, Mifflin falls on the right. SoaR is winning in every single lane right now as they secure the Portal Demon. Kind of in the middle there. DeWorst finds 2 with the pickup. Shaliber, no Purification Beads, plucked back in, and he will fall to the damage of Cougar, who finally gets himself on the board with his first kill right before the 20-minute mark. Stormy's gonna be A-okay. Able to jump out of there, no problem whatsoever. Obey do answer with 1 kill onto the Hell, but like you mentioned, Portal Demon goes the way of SoaR. They're continuing to just take the objectives around the map.
And securing objectives to maintain your lead is really all that SoaR needs to be doing right now, because this Hell has been such an effective force for SoaR in these teamfight engagements. Although they lost out on the Gold Fury in that engagement with Obey, at the same time, they were able to just pick up so much off of the map because they were just immediately back to full health. Obey have to really start prioritizing Shaliber as their target in these teamfights, but the issue is it's so hard to get onto him in the backline.
Well, there's a Fear No Evil on the Kaden, trying to find the pick onto the jungler, but he didn't even use his Purification Beads. Great patience out of the Awilish player, able to hang on to that ever-important relic, despite the Fear No Evil coming out of Mifflin. So SoaR know they're able to play aggressive without that big assassin ultimate to try and deter them.
And Obey being really careful here, hanging around their side of the map a little bit more, but you can tell SoaR are definitely hungry to try and fight this one out.
Doris gonna get feared by Medieval. So much damage on the Soul Later. Plucked back into the cage. There's the Scarab's Blessing, and he will get reset. Medieval handling 2 by himself by the speed buff. Tries to get a couple purification beads out, and he will, at least from Delta Marine 72. All 5 members of SoaR still standing strong, trying to siege down this tier 2 tower, using that healing from Challenger effectively. Mifflin almost has that Fear No Evil available, but only the purification from Challenger is on cooldown. Jelly still trying to play that frontline role on this Khepri. He's done a good job of keeping up in farm despite the disadvantage across the map, but he can't quite find the abduct. There's a Fear No Evil pushing Stormy Raids underneath that tier 2 tower, and then picked up and tossed back as well. There's a crushing wave from Delta Marine, knocks down Stormy. Desert Fury not able to find enough damage, but the knockup from Delta Marine is perfectly timed. Locked Caden underneath that tower, and there goes the second kill the way of Obey. Jelly with no fear, low HP, dashing forward. All of Obey trying to find the last 3 members of SoaR, but they're too quick to handle. Obey defend their tier 2, almost even it up in kills, getting closer and closer to knocking down this lead that SoaR earned for themselves early on. Now only down 1 kill, 10-9.
I mean, Obey just diminished a 6, almost 7K gold lead down to hardly even 3K at this point in time, which is a pretty massive turnaround. SoaR taking up these fights underneath the towers have been unfavorable for them both times. They should really start reconsidering just how much they want to commit underneath the tower objectives, because Obey have done an excellent job, particularly Delta Marine, at knocking up whoever tries to step into that tower line and just ulting right off the bat and securing that kind of Hebo damage. That's all you really need to do every time. Whether or not he picks up the kill, he's got his team surrounding him for the follow-up.
I mean, you called it right off the bat, Taco. This composition for Obey is all about the counter engage, and there's no better place to counter engage than underneath your own tower, where you've got a 6th man there defending you, putting out damage into the opposition. That's exactly what Obey has done excellently thus far, at least being able to hang on to the 23-minute mark and really start to cut into that lead that SoaR had early on in this game that you really expected them to keep on going. But look at the mid lane farm. Challenger was off to such a great start and has just not been able to find any farm on the map. He's now down 3 levels to Delta Marine.
Delta Marine's positioning ever since his early pickoffs has been great. He is ensured to hide behind Jelly on this Khepri almost every single fight, and because of that, not only is he farming out safely and more efficiently than Challenger, but he's just doing a lot more in these fights as well. Challenger at this point in time is trying to prioritize his healing and securing cleanses for his team to escape the counter engagements, but realistically, at a certain point in time, it could potentially not be enough because his team is just overcommitting couple of time again, and if they continue to overcommit into Obey, they could very well find themselves losing this game.
Well, Gold Fury started up here by SoaR. Caden finds the knockup onto Jelly, but no pull in quite yet. Great impale from Cougar, but it stacks right on top of that Fear No Evil, so Caden doesn't move around too much. There's a Pillar of Agony coming out of the Hades. Good amount of damage onto Jelly, but not enough to really force that Scarab's Blessing ultimate. Desert Fury comes through from Cougar, trying to put in the damage. There's the Petrify from Zaxi, gets the Purification beads out from Delta Marine, but DeWurst responds in kind, getting this exact same relic out. There's a knockup, there's the damage. Challenger uses the Aegis, and the Crushing Wave doesn't do anything there for Delta Marine, but he's still standing. The Scarab's Blessing is good. Mifflin turns around on a Caden, and Delta Marine is safe, and DeWurst is just handling 3 members of SoaR. Make that 4 now as Mifflin comes through. The Monkey bounces Challenger right into the death, as well as the damage on the Zaxi. Mifflin with 2 kills in that engagement, and the protection for Delta Marine pays off for Obey. They snag 3 kills, they take the lead, they hit a dozen on the kill count, as well as secure their 2nd Gold Fury of the game. Surprisingly, somehow, we're at 25 minutes and Obey have the gold lead.
And Really, a lot of this is falling onto the shoulders of Delta Marine. He has been an absolute carrying factor for the side of Obey. After he picked up the Divine Ruin, these fights have just gone so much more in favor of Obey, especially considering that SoaR just playing it a little bit too aggressively. They just need to learn how to engage and disengage. Disengaging is so crucial at this point in time, because if they're not picking up the kill inside of that Odin ring, they just need to back off immediately and wait for the reset.
Dewars has also done an excellent job of occupying the back line of SoaR. Zaxi has not been able to step as far forward as he was in previous fights. Has been able to make less of an impact because of the zoning capabilities from Dewars, as well as the separation of the team fights by Mifflin has been excellent. Really, all of Obey they look like different players than they did in the first 13, 14 minutes of this game, really starting to turn it around for the defending world champs. SoaR now on the back foot for the first time all game. They're the ones who are going to try and have to defend against the push from Obey, as they're starting to get, the defending world champs starting to get a little bit more confidence after winning the last few team fights.
I'd be feeling pretty confident too, with the Divine Ruin, 2 Pestilences, and a Brawler's Beat Stick on my side to try and counter some of that healing potential from Shaliber.
And in previous seasons, the Divine Ruin for pickup for Delta Marine would have been a damage losing option. It would have been a utility option. In Season 4, Divine Ruin is an excellent flat penetration item, and you can see just how much pen Delta Marine has. He's got the penetration boots, he's got pen on every item he's built this far, outside of Sands of Time and what's going to be the Rod of Tahuti. Every other item he has is in the name of chunking through tanky targets like Medieval and like Stormy, because that's who's been in his face all game long.
You know what else has been in the face of SoaR all game long? Is the fact that Shaliber is level 15.
Yeah.
The last time we saw him at level 15, Delta Marine was level 17. So Shaliber has actually, literally not been acquiring any farm for the past few minutes here.
And it's been becoming a problem because now he's the same level as his support. And you mentioned how Shaliber's been trying to play this utility role and cleanse his teammates, but the build doesn't really necessarily lend itself to that. The Book of Thoth is a damage option on this Hell, as well as the mana that helps him out, but really looking for him to put out a little bit more damage. And the levels are important to get into that cleanse ability to make sure that he can support his teammates as much as he would like to. So I mentioned SoaR, it's their turn to try and defend the push from Obey. They've had a lot of trouble doing the opposite to Obey, so SoaR looking to do exactly what Obey has done to them, basically, to counter-engage underneath this tower. And I think that really lends itself to, or doesn't lend itself to Obey's composition, because they don't have a hard engage. They really have to rely on the Blink, Fear No Evil from Mifflin, who's lurking in the back, looking for it. Silenced out there by Medieval as Dewars heads into the back line to zone out Shaliber and Zaxi. Petrify comes through in a nice cage there, right on top of that Pillar of Agony, but Mifflin's able to jump out, no problem. There's the pickup and the toss by Dewars, and Medieval falls to the damage from the crushing wave. Dewars still trying to be that frontliner. Shaliber isolated. Still level 15, mind you, underneath, as he falls to Mifflin, who gets 6 kills. He's been a part of 13 of the 14 kills for Obey, as they have broken the game wide open, now into their favor. Tier 1 tower fell, Tier 2 tower about to fall as well. SoaR has squandered the lead they worked so hard to get. Now they're not only worried about the lead, they're worried about the game.
Obey might not have the best initial engage right now with their draft, but their poke potential is just so strong at the moment due to the anti-heal presence that they're really having. It's impacting Shaliber so much in every single one of these team fights, and SoaR a little bit too much, even underneath the tower. For Medieval to try ulting, you're pretty stationary as a Hades when you jump into that ultimate, and for a Hebo, that's probably the most perfect situation you could possibly be in.
As well as Eric Cougar, who has a lot of penetration. He's got the chin size as well. He's able to just pound Medieval with these autos, and he doesn't really have a lot of physical protection to his name. It's only that Mark of the Vanguard and the Breastplate of Valor. I mean, the Magi's Cloak a little bit, but not a whole lot to really write home about. So you know that Medieval is just getting shredded by these auto attacks from both Eric Cougar and Mifflin, who's really doing a lot of damage, not too far underneath Delta Marine on this Humbats.
Plus, the Warlock Sash for Medieval is also working against his favor, considering that Chins is pretty much the item you want against somebody who's prioritizing health.
And he's not only with the Warlock Sash, but the Bulwark of Hope as well. well. A large chunk of HP that feels good, but up against Chins feels significantly worse. Revealing Ritual popped there by DeWorst. See exactly where everyone on SoaR is. Trying to get a little bit of information for his team. DeWorst also has that Frenzy up and ready to go, prioritizing these rituals. Spent 1,500 gold on him instead of finishing off that build. Content with Mark of the Vanguard for now, I suppose. Obey, they're content trying to secure this Portal Demon once more for their team. DeWorst in the front line again, finding the knockup. There's the pullback onto Medieval. Fear No Evil comes out, trying to focus down the Hades. The very tanky Guardian, or Mage rather, is going to get tossed right back in, but the Crushing Wave wasn't waiting for him this time. Kaden blinks into the back line, trying to find the kill onto Mifflin, but he's immediately forced to retreat. Medieval getting some heals right now from Shalibert, trying to keep him in the fight. But a lot of cooldowns used there, a lot of blinks and meditations as well. But that Fear No Evil is on cooldown, and that Mifflin's been a big part of these engagements.
Mifflin has been having such an impact with the engagement, and now the impact could actually be falling onto Stormy.
The Frenzy pop, and Cougar puts him down immediately with the auto attacks. Kaden still trying to be that nuisance in the back line, but all of Obey immediately turn their attention to the jungler. Mifflin Goomba stomps him with the somersault and able to get some revenge onto the jungler. Cougar finds Shalibert, who is only level 16, though he did find a level in that little engagement. 3 dead once more for SoaR. Obey all 5 members here at the Fire Giant. They're not even worried about that Portal Demon. They're going to secure the big boy objective for the squad. It's going to go their way. Medieval was trying to get it in there and try and make something happen, but the Fear No Evil into the abduct. Medieval had the dash. He could have used it if he could have moved his character at all for like 4 seconds there. There was no way for him to get away there.
Very smart play by DeWorst there, immediately knocking off the CC immunity from the Magi's Blessing, and without that available for Medieval, he was just completely open to Obey, and I mean, they just ran straight through him.
Middle Phoenix falls with no sort of contest from SoaR. Stormy's still trying to be that frontliner, but that Odin doesn't do nearly as much in the late game as he did in the early game. Stormy just has to watch, as the rest of SoaR does as well. Right side Phoenix falls. Obey, one time down, right around 6,000-7,000 gold. Have turned it around. They're now up 10,000 themselves. Quite the gold swing, and you know, we were talking about it. This is what you expect a veteran team like Obey to be able to do if given the opportunity, and SoaR kind of opened the door for this to happen.
SoaR just had too many engagements where they kept trying to secure the kills in the team fights underneath objectives that they shouldn't have been fighting around. They just, again, really needed to disengage and reset once the Odin ultimate was burned, and they weren't able to find picks off of it. But because of that lack of recognition with when to back off, they ultimately kind of just helped Obey along this route of the comeback.
And Obey has absolutely made them pay for it. Only the 2 left towers still standing for SoaR, and I don't think I'll be able to say that for very long. Gold Fury's also available, and usually the 34-minute mark, Gold Fury isn't a big deal, but with the introduction of rituals, I think that it would be worth Obey's time to take it out if they do have to retreat, though they still have 2 minutes available to them on this Fire Giant. They're going to spend the majority of that time knocking down these towers. Tier 1 tower falls quickly. Shalibert and Kaden were on the right-hand side, just gobbling up the last bits of farm that they could to try and get ready for this defense. 2 frenzies, 2 flickerings, and Kaden and Mifflin are going at it 1v1. Earlier, Kaden got the better of Mifflin, but not this time around. Hunbats finds the solo kill as the rest of Obey is trying to knock down this Phoenix on the left-hand side. Good petrify there out of Zaxi, but it's just not quite enough damage. Frenzy pop for Obey. There's a dash forward as well. And where did Stormy Rays go? He was there and then he was gone. The Frenzy picks big dividends for Obey as they knock down the support. Mifflin able to escape by the skin of his teeth and just able to get out of danger. Delta Marine finds Medieval underneath that left side Phoenix, which does fall. Jelly with no fear still dashing forward. There's the Desert's Fury out of Air Cougar. The Aegis buys some time for Shalibert, but the other Frenzy is used, and Crushing Wave just one-shots the Titan. It one-shots the Titan at this stage of the game. Delta Marine is full build. He's got the Frenzy available to him.